I'm gonna do an ooh and ah on a Beach Boys record. Are you shitting me?
All right. There we go. That was a fucking wild ride getting all that shit going.
Well,
But,
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it just you kind of already chatted a little bit, but just to set things up, I'll just ask you some questions, and then we'll kind of get into the album. So before we talk about LA and the album, I kind of wanted to get to know you. So tell everybody your name, where you're from, and how do you get into music?
Well, my name is Geoffrey Cushing-Murray. I was born in Pleasantville, New York, 1946. So that makes me pushing 78. But when I was a young boy, probably 6 or 7 years old, we moved down to Puerto Rico, and that was my home until I was about 18 or so. Then we moved back to the States, but by then I was off to school. I went to a military school in Pennsylvania, Valley Forge Military Academy. I did spend some time in upstate New York, 1 or 2 years when I was about in 6th grade, maybe. And I could not get into the chorus. They wouldn't let me in, and they let my cousin in who can't carry a tune, and I ended up singing on Beach Boys records. Yeah. Fuckers. But anyhow, so I grew up in Puerto Rico. Oddly enough, there's other people involved with the Beach Boys that were there at the same time. Carly Munoz is from Puerto Rico, lived, like within walking distance of where I was, and Jack Riley also was there in Puerto Rico. I never met Jack Riley because of the Americans in Puerto Rico, usually found each other somehow or other, but I never met him. But there's the little weird Puerto Rico connection with the Beach Boys. Let's see. And then I graduated from high school from the Cheshire Academy in Cheshire, Connecticut, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Okay. Not the institution, not the reform school, but the actual prep school.
Yeah.
And they threw me out of there, but I did Glee Club stuff there.
There you go.
Yeah. I was always doing something involved with it. I took singing lessons starting when I was maybe 15 years old, because I had a big voice, then I went to college, and I was in West Virginia. After I got thrown out of Cheshire Academy, I went to a lot of different schools because I was hard to handle as a boy. But so I went to school in West Virginia for a while, and I was a theater arts major there. And I did musicals and danced in chorus lines. It was very embarrassing. Photographs exist somewhere. But then after I got thrown out of there, I went in the Army.
Yep.
I came out of the Army. I went to Vietnam. I was an officer in the Army. I went to Vietnam. I came back, and I like your eyes expression at that. Yeah, I'm a Vietnam combat veteran.
Holy shit!
Yeah, and then this is something that would come up in conversations with Carl.
Yeah.
Where he would say, we would be talking about, being on stage, and like the excitement of that sort of stuff. Like the adrenaline pumping, and we could relate to each other on that level. It was funny,
well, Carl was singing songs, and you're a combat veteran.
Yeah, but he's in front of a very large audience. When you do that, when you get up on a stage like that in front of a lot of people, it's a thrill. It's
yeah. I just think it's funny because you're like, well, I got a little bit nervous in front of all the people at the Carl Wilson tribute show, and then couple of years back, you were fucking fighting in Vietnam.
Yeah, people were trying to kill me.
But I mean, yeah.
So we could relate. You know, and we can relate further, you know, like one of our conversations would, you know, yeah, Carl, you know, we're the same, we were the same age,
Yeah.
basically. And, you know, and I said, yeah, you know, I kind of grew up on the Beach Boys sound. And Carl said, yes, me too.
Literally.
Yeah, you know.
Well, yeah, he was like doing the vocal harmonies with Brian when he was 6 and stuff. Yeah, you did literally.
Yeah. Well, you know, well, his first stuff was done when he was 16 or 17 years old, you know, in the Pendletons or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I'm actually reading the book right now, Becoming the Beach Boys. I forgot who
Excuse
wrote it,
me.
but it's a good book. But I just like remember reading that like Carl Wilson was like already shredding on guitar at age 12, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, he was a good
Yeah.
guitarist. Like how good would you say he is? Who do you like put him up with?
Well, it's hard to say because a lot of what he was doing was like rhythm guitar, you know,
Yeah,
not like spectacular soloing. And in you know what I always was interested in terms of like when I started to play guitar in my 20s
yeah.
was I just wanted to play chords and play rhythm, and that's all I still do, you know. So I really appreciate um, excellent rhythm guitar players.
Well,
You know,
I'm a
they don't
guitar
get all the
player.
spotlight. They don't get all the spotlight, but you know,
Well,
they
it's
drive the
hard.
band. You know, yeah.
Well, I'm more of a lead guitar guy, so I do a lot of that stuff.
Oh,
But
so
like,
you play scales and stuff like that?
yeah, I just do scales the entire time. That's fine.
Yeah.
But
Well, you know,
I mean, something that I've learned though from just playing along, like there's a lot of tracks that I'll put on like an earbud or something and I'll play along to it is it's how hard it
mhm,
actually is to follow that rhythm pattern consistently for the whole song.
yeah,
Because a
yeah.
lead
Well,
guy, I'm
that's
allowed to fluff up every once in a while because they're like, oh, he's just shredding. But like keeping a consistent rhythm track is hard.
well, one of the big shocks to me was, you know, BB King, you know, sitting down with the people from U2 and they're going to rehearse something, and they said, okay, here's the chord chart, and BB King says, well, I don't play chords. I go, what?
It's
He
BB.
had somebody else to do it for him. You know, he just played, you know, his licks, and that really brought him down a couple of pegs in my end. But so, maybe somebody like Lindsey Buckingham, you
Yeah.
know, there's other really good rhythm guitarists, but you know, who knows? I mean, even AC/DC, you know, the brother with that enormous guitar that he played,
Yeah.
you know, drove it while Angus, you know, wailed.
Well, that's why I like Pete Townsend from The Who. He's
Yeah,
just very he's all over the place with how he plays, but he has such a unique style. He kind of combines rhythm and lead with a lot of stuff, and
yeah.
that's really impressive. And that's he's one of my guitar, I guess, idols, I would say, because I try to like do that
Hmm.
kind of thing, especially when you have one guitarist in the band. It's pretty hard to
Yeah.
keep it going. All right.
Okay,
Yeah, you talked.
so then I got out of the army. I went to UCLA. I was going to be an economics major, and then I hit calculus and statistics, and I said, "Oh no, no, no!" But I was getting really good responses in my English classes. And I
Yeah,
said, well, I think I'll be an English major. I mean, I had written, you know, one of the first things that happened to me when I was like in seventh or eighth grade. You know, we all wrote poems, you know, for a project for the class, and the teacher pointed me out as like, look at this. This is really good. So I said, oh, well, yeah, okay, maybe I got something here. And
yeah,
you know, when I got into English, you know, into poetry, because I was writing poetry and stuff like that. You know, and appreciating that stuff when I was like preppy at Cheshire. You know, like I would carry around the fancy books, you know, that looked really good. You know, but I probably didn't know what the hell I
yeah.
was really reading. But I got into that, and I was thinking, well, you know, maybe I'll be. I was talking to one of my favorite professors who actually came to see me playing in bands, you know, like really bad bands. Um, and I said, well, I think maybe I'll go get a graduate degree and, you know, teach English. And he said, no, don't do that. Most of the kids that come here to school are looking for a place to park their cars. You know, go write. You know, right. And I did, and one of somebody lived in the building that I lived in while I was going to UCLA in the early 70s. Said, hey, you got a nice voice. You want to join a band? And I did. My girlfriend said, what, are you crazy? Like I was 24, something like that. I'd already been in a band when I was like 15 in Puerto Rico. That it was like a garage band. It was no big deal. But I did sing in front of people and on the radio down in Puerto Rico. So it wasn't like a real big stretch. And of course, they wanted me to write words, which I could actually do. And I was very interested in music, and I wanted to take some music courses because I was very interested in how rhythm worked. How music could make you get up and move.
Yeah.
How the beat worked. And there was stuff in my education that said, well, you have the old Greek stuff. Iambic pentameter, blah, blah, blah. And there was a famous poet named Ezra Pound who said that if you really want to work with musical notation and rhythm, look to the musicians. And I said, oh, yeah, well, I'll do that. And the other side of it, nobody could make money writing poetry. There's no career in that. However, writing songs, you could make a lot of money, so I started doing that.
Yeah. How did you meet Carl? How did that kind of come into fruition?
Okay, that's pretty well known. I was dating a girl who I met in an English class, where I shined.
Yeah.
And she was a very good-looking girl. And her younger sister, was dating Billy Henshey. So that was like in the very early 70s, like 71, 72 perhaps,
Yeah, it's like right when Billy like kind of first started getting into that atmosphere.
Well, Dino, Desi, and Billy was over, so. And Billy came to see some stuff, but I lost contact with him after I broke up with the girl and stuff like that. But I was in bands then, strange band, like the first one was like we were mothers of Frank Zappa, Captain Beefheart kind of influences in that band, and I didn't really feel all that comfortable there, but I had to stand up in front of the band and sing. One of our songs got on Dr. Demento. I don't know if you know what Dr. Demento is, but
I've heard of it.
Dr. Demento had a show where he would play oddities, and I think I didn't sing on the song that they actually played on Dr. Demento in that band. Somebody else did. It was like, I think it was called the Fart Song, something like that.
Yeah, that's Frank.
But that's where I was like learning how, to do that stuff. And I did like top 40 bands, but I wasn't doing like the regular stuff, and then I started to actually write. I figured out how to kind of write songs. They're very different than like writing poetry. And eventually, I hooked up with some, really good musicians. Like on the Mellencamp, the song that Mellencamp covered, my collaborator was a man named Rick Littlefield, who went on to become a college music professor. But he was a studio musician. And even while he was in my band, when I started to do original material and cut demos, serious demos, like in an actual 8-track studio. Heretofore, all my demos had been done on a TAC 4-track, where you would ping pong songs back and forth, like you could get maybe 12 tracks out of 4. The tape would stretch or break. It was like, really hard. But when I got into an 8-track studio with actual studio musicians, for example, the Littlefield, this guy, he played guitar for Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
You know, so I was working with, you know, like really good musicians. The drummer on the demos was Hoppy Hodges, who was the drummer in Buckingham Nicks, which was the precursor to them joining Fleetwood Mac. And so those demos were really good. And those were eventually, I hadn't seen Billy in a really long time. Somehow we hooked up at a wedding somewhere, and you know, I said, hey, you want to hear these demos? And he sure did. And you know, he wanted to take them to Carl, and I said, no. Yeah, I've been rejected all over town, you know, because the stuff aside from maybe the song that Mellencamp and Steppenwolf eventually did, Hot Night in a Cold Town was on that demo, but the other stuff was, you know, I don't know if that would ever, you know, if anything that ever would have been made of them. I mean, I had people that were interested in them, like you know, a fellow who's turned out to be, you know, one of my closest friends, you know, that we socialize with all the time now, is the writer Bud Scapa. I don't know if you know that name.
I don't know the name, but
yeah, but he's a very famous rock critic, you know, who you know, did the original Rolling Stone reviews on. He said, wait a minute, that song's really good. And so he gave me a little bit of imprimatur, you know, like, oh, the rock critic likes it, you know. So the stuff that actually went to Carl. Billy's sister, Annie Wilson, was married to Carl. She also was like saying, come on, let's give us the tapes. We'll take them to Carl. And I said, that's crazy. You know, you don't take stuff to the Beach Boys, you know, like expect anything to come out of it. And lo and behold, he liked it a lot. So, yeah, you know, of course, that put me over the moon. You know, that was it, you know.
And those
so
yeah, no, go on.
Yeah, so come up to the house, you know, go up to his house on Stone Canyon. And you know, eventually, you know, we talked, you know, hung out a bit, and then said, okay, let's go. You know, went into his piano room, and he started playing, you know, stuff, you know, like collaborators do. It's like a strange little thing, you know. And he said, I just was playing some chords, something that he had been working on, and I don't know whether it may have just come out of the blue to him. And I said, so what are you looking for there? And he said, it could be anything. And you can find that demo online now of the song called It Could Be Anything, as long as I'm doing it with you. And that we went, you know, and that said, well, that's okay. Let's finish. Well, I'll work on it. We're going to finish. And he said, no, let's go to the studio. You know, let's go to the studio. And he meant Brother, you know,
like Brother Records.
Brother Records studio, like the real deal. You know, I mean, this is, you know, we're not done with this. I'm not sure that, I don't think it's finished. You know, and you can find it on YouTube. It appeared a couple of years ago out of the blue. People didn't, you know, Alan Boyd, who's somebody that works in the Beach Boys, you know, history stuff, found it. So what is this? And there it was, and you can actually hear me singing on it behind Carl.
That's awesome.
Which, yeah, that was singing with Carl in a room, just the two of us.
Gotta be like some sort of experience.
You know, because I was he liked it. He liked my singing, so that was okay with me, as you can imagine. So then, you know, with that song, you know, we put it away. We never, you know,
All right. Do you want to get into some of the album?
Yeah,
Like
go ahead.
picks. And then if there's other stuff that you have stories for, like
I, you know,
yeah,
I'm lubricated now, so the anxiety's over.
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, Good Timin is the first one. This is the one that everybody knows. I think it's a pretty song. It's not my favorite from the album, but I do like it. It's pretty classic Beach Boys with the harmonies and the melodies. Carl gives a pretty good vocal.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts, stories, anything interesting?
Not much. I mean, you know that it was a big hit in England, and I think it was the highest charting song on the record. I This is a nice, nice Beach Boys song.
Yeah.
You know, and the certain aspects of the Beach Boys production, it's hard to beat the way that, the
Yeah.
way the voices go together. And I can tell you, as somebody said, "Hey, okay, we're recording. Geoffrey, here, use what I'm back. I'm gonna do an ooh and ah on a Beach Boys record. Are you shitting me? No,
That's
no." And
that's
to be standing there and watching them, put that stuff together. It's just like, wow, how did they do that? And I'm just going, ooh.
that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah. Let's see who's the writer.
That was
Who's the
Carl
writer?
and Brian.
Yeah, Carl and Brian. Yeah, hard to go wrong.
Yeah, it's a good. They were a pretty good duo. I'm surprised they didn't do more stuff together, but they're very different. I feel like they were very different songwriters. I mean, Brian is
Yeah.
Brian, and then Carl is definitely has his signature style with stuff. All right, Lady Lynda. I think this was the big hit in Britain, and I think it went to like number 2.
Yeah.
And this is a Al Jardine and Ron Altbach tune, and you can definitely tell.
Al is a stand-up nice guy, of the Beach Boys that I've come across and dealt with, he, nice, decent guy. It sort of sounds like some other musician that was involved in that, and I think they've been long dead. Isn't that the one? That's the
It was like a Bach.
yeah, and I can't, that was not for me.
Yeah.
I
It took a while for it to grow on me, especially getting that past that intro where it's like it's just like classic orchestration. Once you kind
yeah,
of get to the meat of the song, I enjoy it a lot though. It's a very fun song, but I don't put it on too much.
yeah.
Uh, but now we're getting to the what I consider the real meat and potatoes of this album. So I think this next up I gotta check 1 second. Full Sail. I
Full
think
set.
this is a very pretty one. I know you had a hand in this one. This is one of the ones you and Carl did.
I
I
did have a yes, I did have a
very
hand in
clearly.
it.
I really like the keys on this one. There's a little drum breakdown before the second verse when the drums initially come in. And
Yeah,
if I remember, you're on the backing vocals on this one, right?
I am in the backing. You can hear me actually in the bridge. It's Carl and I singing together. The Adventures on the High Seas. That's and people say because I wasn't credited, so there were people like Adam Marsland. I don't know if you know who he is. He's like one of the Beach Boys expert kind of guy. Like knows more about the Beach Boys than the Beach Boys do themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And he has a great video series called about pet sounds. It's really worth looking into. And he said, yeah, I think that husky voice in the background, I think that's probably Geoffrey Cushing-Murray, the co-writer. And that's how people found out that it was actually me. So
Yeah, I'm looking at because I have the record right in front of me, and I'm looking at a lot of the
yeah, you won't see my name as a singer. Yeah.
no, I mean you even see where they got instrument rentals, but they don't see you on there, which
Everybody knows now.
well, yeah, that's one of the beauties of the internet is
Yeah, well, like my life story now is well, yeah, I sang some backgrounds on a Beach Boys record. It's like
that's more than
just a
anybody else
little
can
bit,
say.
but whew,
Like you said, I mean,
actually, it was a featured part.
like you said, you got to do the oohs and ahs on a Beach Boys record, and there's not a lot of people who can say that besides the Beach.
Well, yeah, But Full Sail, uh, the lyric, of course, it has something to do with, like the Beach Boys over. I was trying, looking at what am I going to do? Well, I had the Full Sail part, and I said, well, this is the kind of like, what's the famous, their big ocean going song. I go, why am I drawing a blank?
I'm drawing a blank too. They talk about the ocean.
I am ancient. Yeah, it's it's the sea chanty. I feel so drunk, I want to go home.
Oh, Sloop John B.
Yeah, Sloop John B. Like, okay, well, I'll try to
Well,
hook you into
they have a lot of songs about the ocean, so I don't blame you.
So Sail on Sailor, that stuff. So that. Well, I think I can work with this, and it's got a lot of, it's got a lot of nice lyrics to it, and it's lush, and
yeah, it's a very pretty track.
Yeah, and Carl singing, it's.
Do you have and like you said, so you said kind of like you kind of took inspiration from a lot of like looking at the Beach Boys and.
Well, yeah, it's like, okay, what fits to, on our songs. There was nobody there but Carl and I in the room, so I produced Carl's vocals.
There you go.
I produced Carl's vocals, and actually, that I learned an awful lot doing that, because came out, played one of the songs for James Guercio, who's a very famous producer, Chicago, yeah. And Guercio said, Jeff, you should go back in there because it doesn't sound like Carl knows the song, right? And I said, okay. Went back in and like worked on it some more, and got a better vocal out of Carl than because I was yeah, that's good, yeah, okay, sounds great, that's Carl Wilson.
Carl
Jesus
Wilson,
Christ, yeah, no, what am I doing in here? Yeah, why am I sitting behind the control booth, telling him, like saying, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, you're working with Carl Wilson. You're gonna be scared shitless telling him that's a bad vocal. You're not gonna tell him.
Yeah, try this.
All right. So the next one, Angel Come Home. This is my favorite from the album. I really like this one. I like the way that the verse builds up, and then you get Dennis going, "Waiting for my angel come home." I love the way that just builds up. It's just such a pretty song.
Yeah.
And then you get to it's kind of like a repeat of the chorus. It's like, "Angel, angel, come home." It's just one of my favorite later period Beach Boys tracks. I think it's in my top 20, top 25 of all their songs.
A lot of people like it. I mean, I can remember.
One.
I can remember after I, after I, walked away because I pretty much walked away from the business, and I, working someplace else, and in a lunchroom somewhere. I said, yeah, I wrote some songs, like what? Like Angel Come Home. He said, oh my God, that song was the song of the year for me.
That's said, awesome.
That really makes it, that makes it worthwhile. And there's a famous newsletter, right, that written by that circulates all over the music industry, called the Left Sets Letter. You could subscribe to it if you wanted to, but it goes into a lot of different stuff. And Left Sets wrote a whole long piece on Angel Come Home. It was his absolute favorite breakup song. Every breakup he ever had, he played Angel Come Home. It was his all-time favorite breakup song. And the Dennis Wilson wrote it, was just incredible. And my friends said, oh no. Oh no, that's Geoffrey Cushing-Murray. Yeah. So when we were cutting Angel Come Home, Dennis didn't want anybody. He didn't want anybody in the studio but Carl, and
Yeah.
the engineers and such. So I sat outside. I sat on the steps outside, and Angel Come Home has some strange little things in it again, and Carl wasn't familiar exactly with how stuff was supposed to be phrased, how it was meant to be phrased, because some of it's a little tricky. So Carl would come out and say, how's that part go? And then he would go back in and tell Dennis, and then like a few minutes later he'd come back out again, and that what were you going to do there? And he'd go back in, and that's how it was done. And it came up, Carl was right that the Dennis version, the Angel Come Home, was like tortured, and that's how I felt about it myself, because it was like part of my own personal torture. There's like the conception was that it was, a lot of people say that Angel Come Home was about Carl and his divorce.
Right.
And well, maybe, when we first talked about the song, he had this idea of, honey, bring the angels back home. And I didn't know exactly how that might work out as a as a lyric.
Right. Honey,
and
bring the angels.
I had my own personal my own personal thing going on, where I'd been dumped by somebody, to whom I am currently married for over 30 years now. I mean, she dumped me for a soap opera actor in New York, and there was like a big separation for like years and years and years. And so that, now the puzzle laid on my table, and the piece, because I couldn't, it was an emotional thing that I felt that she and I were meant, to be together. And, when it broke up, it personally destroyed me. I mean, how could I be so wrong about this, right?
Yeah.
And so now the puzzle laid out on my table, and the pieces don't fit. It's hard to talk about, like collaboration, because part of it is like being in the room with somebody, right? And just being in the room, and the vibe, and some kind of magic happens that it probably might not have happened at all if I'd just been sitting there by myself. And honestly, if I'd been in the room all by myself writing the song, it probably never would have got finished, because that's my problem. It's Christine McVie was asked about her desert island songs. She was like on a desert island, and Angel Come Home was her choice.
That's awesome.
Was a choice, yeah. Yeah, that's her real name, Christine Perfect. And I'll tell you a story. Backstage at the Universal Amphitheater, I'd take my mom to a to a show, and she'd never been to a rock concert in her life. Then we had dinner with Carl before the show, and there we were backstage and stuff like that. My mom was really into art stuff, and especially like sewing and all kinds of like knitting and stuff like that. And Christine McVie was wearing this crocheted vest, and my mom, who was a personality herself, I just walked up and started handling stuff. Saying, oh, that's really nice. It's Mom, oh Jesus, that's Christine McVie. What are you doing? And of course, she was she was just right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a funny moment. I mean, my first experience with Dennis was on the Angel Come Home.
Yeah.
Where Carl decided that, he wanted Dennis to sing it. And I didn't know, prior to that, I had no exposure to Dennis, right? I mean, I'd met him, through Carl, like more hanging out and having fun kind of stuff that was unrelated to music. I don't think he even knew that I was like a songwriter, just a friend of Carl's, sort of.
Yeah. Right after Angel Come Home, we have Love Surrounds Me. I think I already mentioned this. I think this is my other favorite from the album. What I love about this one is like you get right after the verse, you kind of get this like funky breakdown. It goes, "Durr, durr." Yeah, I love that. And, there's one lyric I really like, and it's hold on, I have it written down right here. Did I love you or did love have me? That was is that you?
Huh? Well,
Is that
yeah,
you? Yeah, well, yeah, you wrote all the lyrics to this
I
one.
wrote all the, I mean, yeah, I wrote all the words in all of those songs.
Oh, and they're all great, dude. I love them.
Yeah, I mean,
that was definitely your strong suit.
Of course, there's nobody here who can deny it either. So I can say, yeah, I wrote every, like, but Love Surrounds Me. I had the chorus. I had the title. Yeah. But I wrote every word. We're talking about Love Surrounds Me.
Yeah.
Which was originally meant to be on Bamboo.
Right.
And they were looking for stuff to fill out the album, the LA Light album. And James William Guercio, the very famous producer, he said, here's the track. It was an empty track, right? Just a basic instrumental track.
Right.
And didn't have any words, just had a title. And said, here, you do it. You finish it.
New guy.
And I did. And Dennis was well, I'm sure you've heard, and it's no surprise, Dennis was a real character.
Yeah.
I don't think he was enthusiastic about somebody else finishing a song for him. And if you look at the structure of it, it's kind of it's well
yeah.
it's the kind of crap that would come out of me, like not a typical kind of structure, over, it didn't look like, oh, here's the chorus and here, it got all kind of like wiggled around somehow or other, and Dennis wasn't so sure about it. And then it was just he and I in the studio when he cut the vocal, and I carried him through it, and it came out, and a lot of people really liked that song a lot.
I love it. That's one of my favorites from the album. The next one's Sumahama, and I wrote down on my notes, it says, this is definitely one of Mike Love moments. I think it's a pretty melody, and I do like the production on it, but then he starts speaking Japanese out of nowhere. Do you have any Mike Love stories?
I would run into Mike Love, after the Beach Boys stuff, and I'd always have to introduce myself. He never knew who he never, he wouldn't know who I was. And, like the one report I heard was who is this guy? How come we don't have all of his songwriting rights forever? And that was his concern. However, recently, after Billy Henschey died, there was a memorial service, and I sat behind Mike Love at it, and I said, he's a mensch. He showed up, he showed up for Billy, and it meant a lot to me, so, there's a lot of putting Mike Love down is really easy, and a lot of people do it, and they love to do it, but he did a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff. He might be a dick. My feelings towards him, or my impression of him, when he showed up, when he didn't have to, for Billy, meant a lot to me. Changed my view of him a lot. And I listened to an interview of him recently talking about stuff, and okay, Mike, Mike is Mike,
All right, Here Comes the Night disco mix. We kind of talked about this one a little bit.
Well, I saw that when I saw all those musicians in the studio.
Oh,
Wow. And they worked really hard on it, and that was Kurt Betzler.
yeah.
Uh, the I think he passed away a few years ago. Um, and they were, they had all the Donna Summer people in there, and it basically, standalone maybe, if they'd done it as like a novelty single rather than the, big feature on the album,
Right.
people might have had a different opinion to it, but about it, but the fandom wasn't having it. I mean, it's got a lot of good stuff in it,
Yeah.
you listen, if you care to listen to it,
I put down if if it was maybe wasn't 11 minutes and it was released as like a 12-inch single, I think I would enjoy it a lot more. But if I'm listening to it in the context of this, it's just kind of a big stop in the flow of the album for me.
Can we pause here for a minute?
All right, so we just got done talking about Here Comes the Night Disco mix, and I said it. If it was a 12-inch, it would have worked a lot better for me, like standalone. It just breaks the flow of the album for me, and it kind of breaks a lot of the. Because I feel like a lot of people say this is a very incohesive album. I disagree. I feel like a lot of the Carl and Dennis tracks on here are they're pretty cohesive. They sound a lot the same. It's just when you have a disco song and then Shortenin Bread.
Short. Oh God.
We'll get to it.
I watched some. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Because I want to talk about Baby Blue. I think this is one that Dennis wrote with.
That's
Greg
Dennis.
Dick.
Yeah, Dennis really good. Yeah, really
classic
good.
Dennis cut.
Yeah,
the melody's very pretty. Carl is a pretty good vocal on this one. Dennis also plays a part in it, but I can't really take apart this one like I can the others. It's just.
Why bother? I mean, it stands. It stands on its own. It's a good piece of Dennis work. I mean, he had something going on.
Did you So I know you spent a lot of regular time with Dennis, not so much in the studio because he kicked you out. What was it like being with Dennis Wilson? How is that presence?
It was what you've heard the term wild situation.
Yep.
Yeah, wild situation. I mean, I knew stories about Dennis. I dated a girl who worked on this place called On the Rocks, which was above the Roxy Theater, and she would say, "Oh, well, Dennis and Carl Lamb and what's her name, Karen Lamb were in here, and it was a Donnybrook, like a." So and Carl and Billy would talk about Dennis is very dramatic, and probably Dennis was a sweet character. He was terribly abused, as a child. The father was horrible to him. I mean, I'm not going to go into any of the stories I heard, but they're out there, if you want to hear about. There was a handsome devil, just a big personality. Problems, you don't grow up like that. And the same goes for Brian without stuff down the road.
Right. But yeah. All right. Goin South.
Let's see that. Yeah.
This is a pretty song. I think Jake told me, Jake's the other guy I work with. He similar age to me. He's not as big a fan of this album as I am, but he does give it his credit. And he says that I think he said either Goin South or Full Sail is one of his favorites from the album. And the other one of the two was his favorites, and the other one is Growing on Him. And for me, I think they're just both really pretty songs. But Goin South is awesome. At this point, you kind of expect Carl to give a beautiful vocal. It's just a very sweet, pretty song that you can just. I listen usually slower songs. I can play these at night, and they sound a lot better than when I play them in like middle of the day. But I really like this one. Any stories with it?
Well, it's the one. Goin South is the one. Yeah. we did it at Caribou. We were sitting there. Carl started playing some chords. It hadn't been a really productive day, and it was snowing a little bit, and I'm looking at the snow, like out the window. He's playing some stuff, and I think I'm going south for the winter.
That's the lyric.
And came out like in 15, 20 minutes. It was like, and then we spent the rest, we stayed up practically to dawn just going, that's really cool. That one should stand, should pretty much stand stand up for, I wish somebody else would fucking cover it. That's not just to make some money, but I think the production could have been a little bit better on it. Like I don't care for so much for even though it was a really good saxophone player at the end, and there was a full like in the bridge, they had a full string section. I mean, the room was full of string players. That's awesome. And which cost a lot of money and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially with analog tape. And it's not like you could just do it on the computer.
And we talked about it, and I said, I don't like the strings, and there aren't any. It's just the Beach Boys singing, oohs and ahs in the bridge. Yeah. Snowdrifts blowing up against my door, going clear up to the roof. I could be in some west shore. I don't know what I'm waiting for.
I really like the lyrics on this one too. I think these are some of my favorite sets.
You know who else likes them? I like them a lot.
Yeah, I could tell.
Oh yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, I have other songs that nobody ever heard that but I think the lyrics in that are just pretty nifty. Where the swallows, if you don't know there's the reference to the song when the swallows come back to Capistrano. You don't know that song probably, right? No. But that's where the swallows go when they leave when the swallows come back to Capistrano. That was the song, right? Da, 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 da. Well, I want to go wherever it is that they go when they leave Capistrano, going south for the winter. So like if you were hip on your your 40s, early 50s songs, yeah, you'd catch that reference, but it
oh, such a pretty one.
Yeah. And okay, here's the thing. Carl didn't think he could sing it as well as I did. I'm telling you, God's honest truth. He said those words to me, and yeah. So that's that's it for me. My part of my whole thing. Why was I going to try to write songs? I said, I'm going to try to, if I could just write, one song that would, like stand up and that people would look at it and say, that's, that's pretty nice song. That's really good. Then it would have made the whole, 20 years of my musical endeavors worthwhile. And yeah, so that it's going south for me.
So it's a good one. I'm going to listen to it a little bit closer now.
Yeah. And it comes, the snowdrift blowing up, that comes from when I was in college in West Virginia. I flew into Syracuse, New York, and there was a snowstorm in Syracuse. You're in the East Coast, right? You probably heard about Syracuse.
Of course, Syracuse, New York.
Yeah. So when I flew into Syracuse, there had been 80 inches of snow in Syracuse.
Holy crap!
I got in one of those old airport limousines, drove us all over town, and got me home. And we lived up on a hill, and the snowdrift was up against the roof. and my brother Bentley had dug a tunnel to get into the front door. So it's like, yeah,
that's that Northeast United States weather.
yeah. So yeah, Going South is the one that Carl and I, of those, that was our favorite.
Yeah, I've not seen many interviews of Carl talking about this album. So
No, you won't. Yeah, that's so sad that he, and we had talked about getting together again.
yeah, I was gonna ask you that once.
Yeah.
After we talked about Shortenin bread, that was my next question.
Oh, Shortenin bread. Well, yeah, I forget. Yeah.
You got any stories for
Brian? Yeah, they look. If Brian, engineers in the studios would be told, if Brian walked in the studio, no matter what you were doing, roll tape. If you were doing like a reference tape, beep 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 beep, little sounds, where they're calibrating the recorders, record right over that stuff, and no matter what Brian did, because Brian was in such a very sad state then.
Yeah.
Very sad. Such a, it was sad. And they would let him do whatever he wanted to do. It was Shortening bread. The only other time I ever saw Brian at work was he was in a little, Carl and I went to check in, and he was happy as could be, cutting a version of Romeo and Juliet, just like Romeo and Juliet, he had appreciation for like, just pop stuff. Like, as far as what Brian said to Carl about the record, the songs that we did, he said, Brian told Carl that it sounded like he really meant it, and that there were good songs. Well, okay, I'll check that box. That Brian appreciated him, and there was talk about trying to put me with Brian.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And man, that would have been pretty daunting. I don't know.
I feel like,
are you kidding? No, just yeah, wow. But no, it could never happen.
Yeah, I feel like that would have been a cool experience, but I feel like especially around this time with Brian, it would have been
No, it wasn't. No, it was not going to happen.
right.
And and the band was, there was, everybody knows about, like the travails of the Beach Boys,
right. Especially around this time.
Yeah, that's part of like, for me, like getting to the pinnacle, kind of, right? Like there, a lot of people knock on doors and like bang, can I get it here? Would you listen to my, and I made it, I made it to that point in my humble career, that I got it, I got my foot in the door, and I got to do stuff with the Beach Boys where, like the numbers of people in Los Angeles who would have, cut off, well, maybe not both hands, but to have that opportunity, and
It's so cool.
Yeah, it was extremely cool for me. I would have done it just like I would have done it, just like I did this. But that would have been something, but it wasn't going to happen. And hey, that's life.
Yeah, what happened was after LA?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff. Well, I like the fact that some people will say that LA Light was the last good Beach Boys album. I've heard that comment, and I've seen it elsewhere. It didn't just come from me. But the personal, people have personal lives, and things were, like going on, and time, distance. I saw him, and we talked at a concert in Las Vegas backstage, and we talked about getting together, and then he was with Gina,
Right.
Gina Martin. They're married, and her brother died in an airplane crash. And that was like, well, let's talk, this is going on. So we're not going to get, there's personal tragedy in the life, sort of like put the kibosh on that for that time being. And, Beach Boys had their own things going on, and that was that, and I went on, I did my, I went on and I did, had a band that almost got signed, and I had the Mellencamp record. Mellencamp was such a dick, that they wanted me to do another song, and I said, fuck it, I'm not doing it.
I had a really good time. This was the highlight of my day. This is lots of funny stories. Lots of funny stories that some people won't hear, but I'm glad I got to hear it. But yeah, but I had such a good time, and hearing your perspective on a lot of this stuff has been awesome. I really appreciate having you. If you ever want to come on the show,
well,
I'll let you know. For now, this is awesome. Made my day.
Okay, let me know how it works out for you. Or whenever the show, you'll let me know when that is. Yeah. When that happens.
I'll let you know.
Okay, Riley. Well,
I had a good time. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Good luck.
Enjoy your vacation.
Okay.
All right. Bye.